It started with a shout no one expected. "Don't eat that!" a homeless boy yelled, and in that moment, everything changed. The Park Cafe was a favorite spot for the city's rich and powerful. Tucked between perfectly trimmed trees and the soft sound of a nearby fountain, it was alive with energy at midday. Waiters in sharp uniforms moved smoothly between tables, carrying trays filled with fancy meals and fresh coffee. The air smelled like warm bread and blooming flowers. But one man didn't seem impressed by any of it. At a prime table in the center sat Bernard Green, a man whose name meant money and influence. He had built his empire from the ground up, starting with real estate in his 20s and expanding into businesses most people couldn't even imagine. Now at 72, Bernard moved with the quiet certainty of someone who didn't just own his life, he seemed to own everyone else's too. His tailored suit and gold-rimmed glasses reflected the wealth he was used to. Yet, as he looked over the menu, his hand moved slowly, almost with doubt. Across from him sat Marissa, his much younger wife. She looked like she had stepped straight out of a magazine. Jet black hair, a flawless face, and bright red lipstick applied with care. Everything about her was stylish and perfect, except for the smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She spun a diamond bracelet around her wrist absent-mindedly, her focus more on her phone than on her husband. Just outside the patio fence stood a boy. He was small, his oversized hoodie hanging off his thin body. His sharp eyes moved from table to table, scanning the plates and the people. He was looking for a chance. His name was Malik, not that anyone there knew it. He was a familiar figure on that street, always around but never really seen. A kid with nowhere to go, always on the outside. Bernard glanced at his watch. "You're distracted again," he said, his voice calm but direct. Marissa looked up with a smile that didn't warm her face. "I'm right here," she said sweetly, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "You know how much I enjoy these lunches?" Malik's stomach growled. He edged closer, his steps barely making a sound as he leaned against the patio railing. His eyes locked onto Bernard's table. The food was something he hadn't been near in a long time, a clean white bowl of soup, fresh bread, and a tall glass of sparkling water. Then something strange happened. As Bernard adjusted his glasses and picked up his phone, Marissa reached into her designer handbag. Malik saw her hand wrap around a small vial. She twisted it open with ease and tipped it slightly over the soup. The liquid mixed in instantly, disappearing like it was never there. Malik held his breath. He couldn't move. She stirred the soup with the spoon, her face calm, as if nothing had happened. Then she leaned closer to Bernard and said, just loud enough for Malik to hear, "After everything I've done, you're not going to ruin it now." Malik blinked, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. Was this real? Could someone so perfect, sitting in such a fancy place, really be doing something so terrible? But something in his gut told him what he saw was true. His heart raced as he ducked lower behind the railing. He didn't know exactly what had just happened, but the chill in the woman's voice sent a shiver down his spine. He clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms. No one else had seen it. No one else had noticed. It was just him. His stomach growled again, pulling him back to the moment, but his eyes stayed on the couple. Bernard looked tired, lost in thought, his spoon hovering above the soup while he stared at his phone. Marissa looked relaxed again, smiling sweetly, resting her chin on her hand, like she hadn't just said something terrifying. Malik felt the pressure of a decision pressing down on him. Everything inside him said to walk away. Why get involved? Who would believe a kid like him? A skinny boy in a worn-out hoodie, standing just outside a world that clearly didn't want him. Malik swallowed hard and looked around. People were laughing, talking, sipping drinks. Glasses clinked, forks scraped plates. No one saw him, no one cared. But his eyes snapped back to Bernard's hand, now dipping the spoon into the soup. Malik's chest tightened. He hadn't imagined it. He knew what he'd seen. Marissa had put something in that bowl. And if Bernard took a bite, something bad would happen. His heart pounded. He didn't know this man, but that didn't matter. Right was right, and wrong was wrong. The moment felt endless. Then, without thinking, Malik pushed off the railing and marched straight to the table. His legs felt heavy, but he kept moving. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Don't eat that!" Everything stopped. Heads turned. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Somewhere, a fork dropped with a sharp clang. Bernard froze, his spoon inches from his lips. His eyes met Malik's, wide with shock. Marissa spun around, her face hardening. "What did you just say?" she snapped, her voice sharp and cold. Malik didn't back down. His voice shook, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. "She put something in your soup. I saw her. Don't eat it." Gasps rippled across the cafe. Every person turned to look. The silence was thick. Malik stood his ground, chest rising and falling with each breath, adrenaline rushing through him. Bernard blinked, his gaze moving from the boy to his wife. "What's he talking about, Marissa?" he asked. His voice was steady, but his hand trembled as he lowered the spoon to the table. Marissa's calm shattered like glass. She jumped to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. "You little liar," she hissed, venom in her voice. "How dare you accuse me of something like that? Who even let you in here?" The words hit hard, but Malik didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked on Bernard's. He needed him to see the truth. "I saw her," he said, voice clearer now. "She poured something in your soup when you weren't looking. Smell it if you don't believe me." Bernard's face went pale. He turned to Marissa, eyes narrowing. "Marissa, what's going on?" he asked quietly. She scoffed and waved her hand like it was nothing. "He's just trying to stir up trouble. Look at him. He probably wants money. Or food," she spat, throwing a harsh glare at Malik. But Malik stood tall. He stepped closer to the table, fists clenched. "I'm not lying," he said louder now. "She doesn't want you to know, but I saw everything." Bernard's hand hovered over the bowl. He looked torn, caught between disbelief and a creeping suspicion he couldn't shake. Something in Malik's voice made him pause. The air grew heavy. The once busy cafe was silent, everyone's eyes locked on the scene playing out before them, their meals forgotten. Bernard leaned back in his chair, watching the boy closely. His face showed years of dealing with liars and schemers, people who wanted to use him. But this felt different. This boy didn't look away. He didn't blink. "Malik, is it?" Bernard asked, his voice firm but curious. Malik nodded. "Yes, I'm telling the truth. Please, don't eat it." Marissa let out a bitter laugh and crossed her arms, glaring at Malik. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "He's just some street kid looking for attention. Bernard, are you really going to believe this?" But Bernard didn't answer her. Instead, he picked up the spoon again, lifting it slowly to his face. His hand shook, not out of fear, but from the quiet storm building inside him. "Marissa," he said, eyes locked onto hers, "you heard him. So tell me, what's really going on?" Marissa's polished mask cracked, her lips pressed into a hard line. "I can't believe you're even asking me that," she said sharply. "It's insulting." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising. "He's lying. Just look at him. He probably doesn't even know who you are. Why would you trust him over me?" Her words hung in the air, but they didn't have the effect she'd hoped for. The crowd was whispering now, eyes flicking between the three of them. "Did she really do it?" "She looks nervous. That boy doesn't seem like he's lying." The murmurs grew louder, and Marissa's fury burned hotter. She slammed her hands on the table, her polished facade shattering. "Enough of this, Bernard. Eat your damn soup and let's go," she snapped, her voice trembling with rage. But Malik didn't back down. He stepped forward again, his fists clenched tight. "If you don't believe me, then test it," he said, louder now. "You're rich. You've got doctors, lawyers, people who can figure it out. Just don't eat it. If you do, you'll regret it." Bernard's jaw tightened. He stared at the bowl, spoon still in his hand, but didn't lift it. His eyes, weary and sharp, shifted slowly toward his wife. "Marissa," he said quietly, "you've been acting strange for weeks. And now, this?" Her face went pale. She stammered, I don't know what you're talking about. You can't seriously think I would—" "Poison me," Bernard finished for her, his voice cutting like glass. A collective gasp rippled through the cafe. Murmurs rose like a wave. Malik stood his ground, chest tight, heart racing. He'd done everything he could. Now it was up to Bernard. Marissa straightened, but the warmth had drained from her face, replaced by something cold and hard.
"This is ridiculous," she snapped. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this nonsense." She reached for her handbag, but before she could leave, Bernard's hand shot out, gripping her wrist, firm, steady. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not until we figure out what's really going on." The waiter, who'd been frozen near the door, finally found his voice. "Sir, should I call the police?" The question pierced the silence. For the first time, real panic flickered in Marissa's eyes. "Don't you dare!" she snapped. "This is a misunderstanding. Bernard, please." But Bernard raised a hand to silence her. "Yes," he said to the waiter without looking away from her. "Call them." Malik felt a wave of relief, short-lived but real. The danger wasn't over, but he wasn't alone anymore. The cafe seemed to hold its breath as the waiter disappeared inside to make the call. Bernard released Marissa's wrist slowly, but his gaze never wavered. Her composure was crumbling. Her eyes flicked around the room, searching for some kind of escape, but there was none. Malik took a step back, hands trembling. Doubt gnawed at him. What if she talks her way out of this? What if they still don't believe me? Bernard's voice cut through the tension. "Malik," he said, "you said you saw her put something in the soup. Can you describe it?" Malik nodded quickly and stepped forward. "It was a small bottle, like a medicine dropper, clear liquid. She poured it in when you were looking at your phone, then stirred it like nothing happened. I swear I saw it." Bernard's expression tightened. He turned slowly toward Marissa. She was already shaking her head. "This is insane. He's lying. Why would I—" "Why would he lie?" Bernard interrupted sharply. "What does he have to gain?" The murmuring grew louder, and then, in the distance, sirens. Marissa's eyes snapped toward the bowl. In that moment, just a fraction of a second, her carefully constructed mask slipped. She looked cornered. Grasping for anything, she turned on Malik, voice sharp and defensive. "You've been spying on us, haven't you? Stirring up trouble because you're jealous, because you have nothing." The words struck Malik like a slap, but he held his ground. I'm not jealous," he said, steady and clear. "I saw what I saw. I couldn't just let you hurt him." The sirens drew closer. 2 uniformed police officers entered moments later, the cafe seeming to shrink around them. The crowd parted, silent and tense. "What's going on here?" one officer asked, his tone firm but neutral. Bernard rose to his full height, imposing even now. "Officers, I need you to take a look at this," he said, gesturing to the bowl. "This boy says my wife poisoned it." The officers exchanged a glance. One leaned down, sniffed the soup carefully, then looked up at Marissa. "Ma'am," he said, "do you have anything to say about this?" Her face flushed a deep red. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "He's just some street kid making up stories. Bernard, are you really letting it get this far?" But the officer wasn't interested in excuses. "We'll need to test the contents," he said, reaching for the bowl. "No!" Marissa blurted, her voice rising in panic. The outburst turned every head and sealed her fate. The officer narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "is there something you'd like to tell us before we proceed?" Marissa's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her hands trembled as she clutched her handbag. Her eyes darted between Bernard, the police, and the now silent crowd. Finally, her shoulders sagged. "Fine," she spat, venom in her voice.
You want the truth? I'm tired of living in his shadow, tired of being controlled. He was never supposed to make it past this year, and She stopped. Too late. The cafe erupted. Gasps, phones raised, cameras rolling. It was over. Bernard's face went pale as the weight of her confession hit him like a truck. One of the officers stepped forward, his expression grim. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for attempted murder. Please put your hands where I can see them." Marissa's composure crumbled. She screamed and struggled as they secured her wrists behind her back. "You don't understand," she shrieked. "I deserved everything he had. Everything." Her voice echoed through the stunned cafe as they led her away. Bernard sank back into his chair, his hands trembling as he slowly pushed the bowl of soup aside. For a long moment he said nothing. His face was a storm of disbelief, pain, and betrayal. Then finally his eyes found Malik. The boy stood frozen, unsure of what to do. But as Bernard's gaze softened, the fury in his features gave way to something unexpected: gratitude. Malik hadn't just saved his life, he'd opened his eyes to a truth he never would have seen coming. The cafe began to hum again, patrons murmuring in low voices, casting glances toward the door where Marissa had disappeared. Some looked at Bernard with pity, others with curiosity. Phones were tucked away, and the shock began to settle into memory. Malik still hadn't moved. Then Bernard gestured gently to the seat across from him. "Malik," he said, his voice low but steady. "Sit." Malik hesitated, glancing around. But something in Bernard's tone made him obey. He slid into the chair, shoulders still tight. "You saved my life," Bernard said. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." Malik fidgeted, gripping the edge of the table. I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't just watch." Bernard nodded slowly, his gaze distant, as if replaying everything in his mind. "Most people would have," he murmured. "They'd turn away, pretend they didn't see, but you didn't. That took courage." Malik gave a small shrug, his voice barely above a whisper. "I guess I just don't like seeing people get hurt." For the first time, Bernard really looked at him, not as a street kid or a stranger, but as a person with a story. "How long have you been out here?" he asked gently. Malik looked away. "A while," he muttered, the shame in his voice clear. Bernard didn't press. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. "Wait here," he said, standing up and walking a few steps away to make a call. Malik sat stiffly, watching. His heart thudded with worry. Was he in trouble? Was Bernard calling the cops again? Someone to throw him out? But when Bernard returned, his expression was calm, almost kind. "Help is on the way," he said. "Help?" Malik echoed, uncertain. Bernard nodded. "I called someone I trust. You'll have a safe place to sleep tonight, a real bed. And if you'll let me, I'd like to do more than that." Malik's eyes widened. "You don't have to," he said quickly. "I didn't do this for money or anything." Bernard smiled faintly. "I know, that's why I want to help. You did what most wouldn't, and if the world had more people like you, Malik, it'd be a much better place." For the first time in a long while, Malik felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Hope. The cafe began to empty, the shock of the event fading into whispers and wide-eyed glances, but at that corner table, 2 lives had shifted. Bernard picked up his water, took a long sip, and looked at the boy again. "Sometimes life gives us the chance to change someone else's story," he said. "You changed mine today, Malik. And maybe, just maybe, I can help change yours." Malik looked up, his dark eyes glistening. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. The sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the cafe floor. And while the moment passed quietly, its impact lingered. Because courage doesn't always wear a suit. And kindness doesn't always come from the wealthy. Sometimes it comes from the ones we overlook, And sometimes the smallest actions leave the biggest marks.